The Sacred Abyss continent is located in the far western part of the Great Thousand Worlds. In a certain sense, it is not just a continent, but a unique space formed from a lower dimension, capable of connecting to the Great Thousand Worlds. In ancient times, this Sacred Abyss continent was one of the battlegrounds for the decisive war between the Great Thousand Worlds and the extraterritorial evil clan. As a result, countless powerful beings fell on this continent, including many heavenly supremes, with their legacies, divine powers, and sacred artifacts lost within. Over the millennia, a few lucky individuals managed to acquire some extraordinary inheritances, rising from obscurity to greatness. These success stories have drawn more and more strong warriors from the Great Thousand Worlds, eager to become the next fortunate ones. However, despite the opportunities, the dangers of the Sacred Abyss continent are beyond imagination. The battle from the ancient era left the space highly unstable, and the harsh environment means that even an Earth Supreme at the peak of perfection must be cautious, or risk annihilation. Moreover, the greatest danger comes from the fact that the extraterritorial evil clan still roams this continent. In ancient times, the continent was originally occupied by the extraterritorial evil clan, and they still control some spatial passages, allowing them to enter. Their goal in entering the Sacred Abyss continent mirrors that of many warriors from the Great Thousand Worlds, as some of their top-tier fighters also perished here during the ancient war. Therefore, these evil clan members are also searching for the fallen top-tier warriors' inheritances to strengthen themselves. This ongoing conflict has turned the Sacred Abyss continent into a point of intersection between the Great Thousand Worlds and the extraterritorial evil clan. When the two sides meet here, it inevitably results in a life-or-death battle. In a sense, the Sacred Abyss continent has become a front line between the Great Thousand Worlds and the extraterritorial evil clan. When Chen and his group arrived at the Sacred Abyss continent, 2 months had passed. Given the vast distance, even Chen was deeply shocked. After all, their journey had been entirely through space jumps by the red flame old immortal. Although this method wasn't as fast as teleportation arrays, it was far more convenient since they didn't need to search for teleportation arrays. Of course, only a heavenly supreme like the red flame old immortal could sustain such a journey, so if Chen and his team had traveled on their own, the time would have doubled. Is this the Sacred Abyss continent? From a desolate mountain peak, Chen gazed into the distance, seeing a darkened sky, the whole world feeling like it was in a state of extreme oppression. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth here was dull, far less vibrant than in the Great Thousand Worlds. Absorbing spiritual energy from the environment was significantly more difficult in this place. Far in the distance, crimson lightning flashed wildly, striking the land, and the violent fluctuations in the lightning caused even Earth Supremes to shudder. This continent seemed to be in a state of extreme turbulence, filled with danger. Long ago, the Sacred Abyss continent was a place for cultivation, red flame old immortal's side, but after it was taken over by the extraterritorial evil clan, it was tainted by evil energy. Even though the Great Thousand Worlds has attempted to purify it multiple times, it's still far from its peak state. Chen, Luoli, Lingxi, and others couldn't help but sigh. The extraterritorial evil clan was indeed an unresolvable enemy of the Great Thousand Worlds because their methods were too domineering, and the contamination of spiritual energy had tainted even the very essence of cultivation. If this continued, spiritual practitioners in the Great Thousand Worlds would eventually be cut off completely. Xun'er, is the ancient Sacred Abyss here on this continent? Chen asked. Red Flame Old Immortal nodded. This is just the outer edge of the Sacred Abyss continent. The ancient Sacred Abyss is located at the very center of the continent. The space there is already shattered and is covered by a time-space storm. We'll need to wait for the storm to weaken before I can send you inside. When he mentioned the time-space storm, even Red Flame Old Immortal's expression became grave. Chen and the others couldn't help but click their tongues when they heard this. They couldn't fathom just how terrifying the space-time storms in the Sacred Abyss continent were, to the point that even a heavenly supreme would be so cautious. The destructive power of the space-time storms is secondary. The real problem is that once you get caught in one, you might be randomly transported to the lands of the extraterritorial evil clan. Seeing their expressions, Red Flame Old Immortal shook his head helplessly and said, "This Sacred Abyss continent connects the Great Thousand Worlds with the extraterritorial evil clan's territories. If you fall into their realm, even a heavenly supreme could face death. This has happened before in the past." Only then did Chen and the others understand why Red Flame Old Immortal was so cautious. After all, even someone as powerful as a heavenly supreme, if caught in the extraterritorial evil clan's region and targeted by their demon emperor, would likely meet a grim fate. We'll head to Sacred Abyss City first. It's the largest city in the Sacred Abyss continent, Red Flame Old Immortal said. As his voice fell, he waved his sleeve, and a surge of spiritual light enveloped Chen and his companions. They then shot through the sky like a rainbow, streaking past the regions filled with crimson lightning. Although the Sacred Abyss continent was dangerous, as long as they avoided the space-time storms, with Red Flame Old Immortal's strength, they were clearly capable of charging through any obstacle. In less than half an hour, with Red Flame Old Immortal's help, Chen and his group saw the outline of a vast city appearing at the horizon. The city, in the dim sky, looked like an ancient beast lying on the ground, exuding an oppressive aura. As they drew closer, Chen noticed a massive, indescribable energy shield enveloping the city. The shield radiated an extremely terrifying spiritual energy fluctuation. That's a Grandmaster-level spirit array. Chen's heart skipped a beat as he observed the shield. With his expertise as a spirit array Grandmaster, he recognized it immediately as a Grandmaster-level spirit array. Moreover, this array was likely not just any ordinary Grandmaster Level 1. This array was set up by the Heavenly Array Elder from the ancient times, Red Flame Old Immortal explained with a smile. Heavenly Array Elder was a Saint-grade Grandmaster and one of the most formidable experts of that era. This array is so powerful that even I, if I went all out, would be unable to break it, he added. A Saint-grade Grandmaster? Upon hearing this, Chen and his companions were shocked, especially Chen and Lingxi, both of whom were Spirit Array Masters. They knew exactly how terrifying a Saint-grade Grandmaster was. In the Grandmaster realm, there were 3 levels: Spirit, Immortal, and Saint. A Saint-grade Grandmaster was equivalent to a Saint-grade Heavenly Supreme. Such an existence was among the highest in the Great Thousand Worlds. No wonder this array. When I just took a glance, I felt unable to analyze it. If I forced my way in, I'd probably be exhausted in an instant, Lingxi sighed. With her high-level Grandmaster cultivation, she could usually find the flaws in any spirit array with a single look. But this one was so powerful that attempting to break it could result in a backlash. The Sacred Abyss continent is connected to the extraterritorial evil clan's lands. Sacred Abyss City has the responsibility of monitoring and deterring any threats, which is why it requires the best defense. Luo Li nodded lightly in understanding. Let's go, Red Flame Old Immortal said, nodding. He led the group toward the enormous city, approaching the terrifying energy shield and passing through it. As they entered the shield, Chen could clearly feel a subtle fluctuation scan his body inside and out. In that instant, it felt as though all his secrets had been exposed. He realized this must be the array's inspection. If any trace of the extraterritorial evil clan were detected, an annihilation attack would likely follow. Once inside the city, Chen and the others were surprised to find it bustling and prosperous. The streets were filled with people, and the noise of activity filled the air. What shocked them even more was that over half of the people here had powerful spiritual energy fluctuations, with many reaching the Earth Supreme level. However, after a moment of reflection, they quickly understood. Anyone brave enough to come to the Sacred Abyss continent would certainly not be weak. Chen and the others scanned their surroundings, and the next moment, almost instinctively, their eyes were drawn to the very center of the city. There, standing quietly, was an ancient stone tablet, towering tens of thousands of feet high. The stone tablet emitted a powerful wave of spiritual energy. At the very top, 3 glaring blood-red characters flashed with a crimson light, captivating all who gazed upon them, and they also exuded a chilling aura. Demon-slaying ranking. Next to the demon-slaying ranking, there was another line of golden characters, emanating an indescribable sense of authority. Palace of the Great Thousand, established. Palace of the Great Thousand? Chen's gaze flickered as he murmured, to name it after the Great Thousand Worlds. What kind of force is this? Truly domineering. Beside him, Red Flame Old Immortal grinned strangely. He stared at the 3 words, Palace of the Great Thousand, and after a moment, he said slowly, of course, it's domineering. That's because this is the existence that surpasses any superpower or ancient clan in the Great Thousand Worlds. The true first power in the Great Thousand Worlds. The first power in the Great Thousand Worlds? Upon hearing Red Flame Old Immortal's words, Chen, Luo Li, and the others all trembled, exchanging looks. They had never heard of this force before. Could it be even stronger than the 5 ancient clans and the other famous superpowers of the Great Thousand Worlds? I wonder who the leader of the Palace of the Great Thousand is. Chen couldn't help but ask. Creating such a terrifying force, its leader must be the pinnacle existence in the Great Thousand Worlds, right? Currently, the Palace of the Great Thousand has no leader. But in ancient times, there was one, the Immortal Emperor, the strongest during the ancient era. Red Flame Old Immortal shook his head and said, "The Immortal Emperor?" Upon hearing that name, Chen's pupils contracted slightly. From the Heavenly Emperor, he had already learned that the Immortal Emperor was the cultivator of the previous eternal undying body. But he never expected that this figure also founded the powerful Palace of the Great Thousand. Then why is it that we rarely hear about this first force in the Great Thousand Worlds? Lingxi, feeling something was off, asked. Red Flame Old Immortal chuckled, because this force only truly exists when the extraterritorial evil clan launches another invasion. In times of peace, the Palace of the Great Thousand is merely a symbol. Chen and the others suddenly understood. So, the Palace of the Great Thousand was established specifically to resist the extraterritorial evil clan. But why had it become the first power in the Great Thousand Worlds? According to the rules passed down from ancient times, most of the heavenly supremes in the Great Thousand Worlds will be recorded in the Palace of the Great Thousand and undergo a review to become guest elders. And those who reach the saint grade of the heavenly supreme will become elders of the Palace of the Great Thousand. But unless the Great Thousand Worlds is facing a catastrophic crisis, these guest elders and elders are not required to contribute to the Palace of the Great Thousand. Do you see now? A force like the Palace of the Great Thousand, with such an array of experts, is it not the first power in the Great Thousand Worlds? Red Flame Old Immortal looked at the four with a teasing expression. Chen couldn't help but twitch his lips. So, this was how the first power came about. But upon further thought, he could feel the terrifying aspects of the Palace of the Great Thousand. In some sense, it was like an alliance of the Great Thousand Worlds, uniting all the forces to fight against foreign enemies when facing a great crisis. After all, the strength of unity is the most formidable. Faced with the powerful threat of the extraterritorial evil clan, the Great Thousand Worlds must integrate all its forces to resist. From this perspective, the Immortal Emperor, who founded the Palace of the Great Thousand, truly had foresight. However, even though the Palace of the Great Thousand is merely symbolic now, don't underestimate it. The power it holds is still beyond your imagination, it's just that it rarely reveals itself. Moreover, the Palace of the Great Thousand holds an unparalleled status in the Great Thousand Worlds. Even the 5 ancient clans treat it with great respect. When moving through the Great Thousand Worlds, facing top-tier forces, sometimes, the title of a guest elder of the Palace of the Great Thousand carries more weight than an elder of the 5 ancient clans. When mentioning the title of guest elder, Red Flame Old Immortal seemed a little smug. Clearly, he was also a guest elder of the Palace of the Great Thousand. At this point, Red Flame Old Immortal glanced at Chen and said, "If you were also a guest elder of the Palace of the Great Thousand, even the Futu ancient clan wouldn't dare to act arrogantly towards you." Chen couldn't help but shake his head helplessly when he heard this. To become a guest elder, one had to reach the Heavenly Supreme level. If he truly possessed the power of a Heavenly Supreme, why would he still fear the Futu ancient clan? The Red Flame Old Immortal seemed to understand what Chen was thinking and immediately chuckled. To become a guest elder of the Palace of the Great Thousand doesn't necessarily require you to reach Heavenly Supreme. Oh, Chen was a bit surprised. Was there another way? The Palace of the Great Thousand held a transcendent position in the Great Thousand Worlds, so if he could become a guest elder without any restrictions, it would definitely be more beneficial than harmful. The Red Flame Old Immortal pointed to the Demon Slayer monument. Chen followed his gaze. Earlier, he had been overwhelmed by the imposing presence of the Palace of the Great Thousand, but now, as he continued looking, he noticed that the stone monument was glowing with spiritual light, as if many names were being formed upon it. At the top, the most striking name was displayed in a purplish-golden color. Under the sunlight, it radiated a chilling aura. Demon Slayer King, Chen Tian. This name stood like that of a king, positioned at the very top of the Demon Slayer monument. In the entire city, anyone who looked at this name couldn't help but show admiration in their eyes. Beneath Demon Slayer King Chen Tian, there were countless other glowing names. Upon closer inspection, many names could be seen. Senior Demon Slayer, Lu Difer. Senior Demon Slayer, LV Shan. Intermediate Demon Slayer, Lu Lingyu. Junior Demon Slayer, Lu Shu. Names were densely engraved on the monument. Occasionally, the spiritual light flickered, and more names seemed to appear, with their ranks seemingly shifting. Chen stared at the monument for quite a while before he saw the red flame old immortal, who seemed to explain its purpose. Everyone who comes to the sacred abyss continent can receive a demon slayer order from the palace of the Great Thousand. Every time you slay an extraterritorial evil being, you gain demon slaying points. These points can be exchanged for various treasures in the palace. With enough points, you can even obtain supreme divine abilities and the top 20 supreme dharma forms. You can even exchange for supreme divine abilities? Chen couldn't help but be moved. He certainly knew that these supreme divine abilities wouldn't be among the 36 supreme divine abilities, but even ordinary supreme divine abilities were extraordinary, and most heavenly supremes didn't even possess them. And now, in the palace of the Great Thousand, you could exchange them with demon-slaying points. How could that not be astonishing? Then there were the so-called top 20 supreme dharma forms, which was even more unbelievable. Such high-ranking supreme dharma forms were incredibly rare. According to the rules of the Palace of the Great Thousand, once your demon-slaying points reach 1,000, you can upgrade from Junior Demon Slayer to Intermediate Demon Slayer. With 3,000 points, you become a Senior Demon Slayer. Even if you are not a Heavenly Supreme, you will still be granted the title of Guest Elder. Upon hearing this, Chen finally understood. So what the Red Flame Old Immortal had said earlier was true. As long as you had enough demon-slaying points, you could still become a Guest Elder of the Palace of the Great Thousand. However, it seemed that 3,000 demon-slaying points were not easy to obtain. From what Chen had seen earlier, there were fewer than 20 people who had reached the Senior Demon Slayer rank on the entire monument. According to the rules, slaying an extraterritorial being with lower Earth Supreme strength earns 50 demon-slaying points. For an Upper Earth Supreme, it's 100 points. For a Perfect Earth Supreme, it's 200 points. Slaying a Demon Emperor grants 3,000 points. An Immortal Grade Heavenly Supreme Demon Emperor gives 5,000, and if you slay a Heavenly Demon Emperor, you'll earn 10,000 demon slaying points. Hearing the Red Flame Old Immortal's calm explanation, Chen and the others were left dumbfounded. They knew that demon slaying points weren't easy to obtain, but they hadn't expected it to be this difficult. By this calculation, to upgrade from Junior Demon Slayer to Intermediate, one would have to slay 20 extraterritorial beings with lower Earth Supreme strength or 10 with upper Earth Supreme strength. To reach Senior Demon Slayer, even slaying perfect Earth-level extraterritorial beings would require 15. But such powerful extraterritorial beings weren't easy to kill. They were far from defenseless targets, so how could they be easily slain? This clearly shows just how incredibly difficult it is to advance as a Demon Slayer. No wonder that among all the names etched onto the stone monument, there are only 20 who have reached the rank of Senior Demon Slayer. Who knows how long it took each of them to accumulate enough demon-slaying points to achieve that level? Chen wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and asked, "Then how many demon-slaying points does it take to become a demon-slaying king?" "The demon-slaying king, huh?" Red Flame Old Immortal let out a sigh. "It's actually quite simple, just 10,000 demon-slaying points. All you have to do is slay a Heavenly Demon Emperor." The four of them felt their scalps go numb. Just kill a Heavenly Demon Emperor? He made it sound so easy. But a being of that level was practically among the strongest in existence. Losing even one would be a massive blow, whether for the Great Thousand Worlds or the extraterritorial evil clan. Could it be that Senior Qin Tian actually killed a Heavenly Demon Emperor? Luo Li couldn't help but ask. Qin Tian, Red Flame Old Immortal's expression turned solemn, with a hint of admiration. Many years ago, back when he was as young as you are now, he led a team to train in the Sacred Abyss continent. But they encountered a powerful being from the extraterritorial evil clan. The result? Total annihilation. His entire team was slaughtered. He was the only one who made it out alive. After that, he stayed on the Sacred Abyss continent for the next 200 years. And during that time, whenever there were reports of the evil clan appearing, he'd charge in like a madman. Over those 2 centuries, he ascended to the level of Heavenly Supreme. Later, he was unfortunately swept into the evil clan's territory by a space-time storm. Everyone assumed he would never return, but he fought his way back, dragging with him the mangled remains of a demon emperor. After that, he became the first demon-slaying king in the Palace of the Great Thousand since ancient times. To this day, no one has surpassed him. When Red Flame Old Immortal finished speaking, the four of them were left speechless, stunned for a long moment before exchanging glances, each seeing the same deep shock in the other's eyes. Such a record. This demon-slaying king, was truly a terrifying legend. Today, Qin Tian is the chief elder of the Palace of the Great Thousand. Until the next palace master is chosen, he and the other rotating elders are responsible for managing its affairs. His name might not be as resounding as the Flame Emperor or martial ancestor across the Great Thousand Worlds, but within the circle of heavenly supremes, his reputation is in no way inferior. As the four were still reeling from the tale of Qin Tian's incredible feats, Red Flame Old Immortal gently stroked his beard, his tone tinged with genuine admiration, something even Mu Chen and the others could clearly hear. Mu Chen nodded slightly. Although he had never met this demon-slaying king, the level of respect he received among the heavenly supremes made it clear his strength was surely extraordinary, possibly even equal to that of the Flame Emperor or martial ancestor. The Great Thousand Worlds, truly a place teeming with hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Senior Red Flame, where can we obtain the demon-slaying order? Mu Chen asked, clearly enticed by the benefits it offered. Beyond the honorary title of guest elder from the Palace of the Great Thousand, just the fact that demon-slaying points could be exchanged for supreme divine abilities was enough to make his heart race. After all, even with all his current assets, aside from one chi transforms 3 purities, one of the 36 supreme divine abilities, he had no other such techniques. If he could gain one from the palace, it would undoubtedly be a tremendous boost to his power. Seeing their obvious interest, Red Flame Old Immortal chuckled softly, then turned and began walking toward the center of the city. Mu Chen and the others quickly followed. They moved swiftly through the city, and after about half an hour, Red Flame Old Immortal finally came to a halt. It was only then that Mu Chen and the others realized they had arrived at the base of the massive Demon Slayer monument. Beneath it stood a towering black pavilion, radiating an oppressive aura from within the main hall that made them instinctively grow more solemn. "This is the Great Thousand Pavilion," said Red Flame Old Immortal, pointing at the black structure. "It's a branch of the Palace of the Great Thousand, responsible for guarding the sacred Abyss continent and monitoring movements of the extraterritorial evil clan in this region." With that, Red Flame Old Immortal stepped toward the Great Thousand Pavilion, and Mu Chen and the others quickly followed. The group walked straight into the Great Thousand Pavilion, and their view instantly widened. The first floor of the pavilion was incredibly vast, with a crystal chandelier floating in midair, casting bright light that illuminated the entire floor. In one particularly spacious corner of the grand pavilion, it resembled a bustling tavern, with people coming and going, and the constant hum of chatter filling the air. When Mu Chen glanced over, his eyes narrowed slightly. He could sense that most of the people in that area exuded powerful spiritual energy fluctuations, and among those waves of energy, there was a dark aura swirling, clearly indicating they were hardened warriors who had lived through countless life and death battles. The arrival of Mu Chen and his group undoubtedly drew the attention of many in that area, but it was clear that most of their gazes were filled with admiration, lingering on Luo Li. After all, with her stunning appearance and demeanor, she became the center of attention wherever she went, even more so in such a deadly place. Unlike the usual astonished glances, these stares were undeniably more audacious. Noticing these gazes, Luo Li furrowed her brows slightly. However, before she could say anything, Mu Chen stepped in front of her, blocking all those prying eyes. At the same time, his expression remained cold as he stared at the crowd, his black eyes flashing with a fierce and murderous aura. In that moment, he resembled a demon, exuding a menacing air. Over the years, Mu Chen had experienced countless life and death battles. The killing intent in his bones was as strong, if not stronger, than that of many hardened individuals on the sacred Abyss continent. However, he usually kept this murderous aura suppressed. When his emotions were exposed, that flow of dark energy could easily send a chill down anyone's spine. Those powerful figures who had previously felt displeased by Mu Chen's interruption were now startled by the intense murderous aura radiating from him. Their eyes widened slightly, and they quickly averted their gaze, surprised by the sheer killing intent emanating from such a young man. That area is the recruitment zone. Those who wish to hunt the extraterritorial evil clan deep in the sacred Abyss continent usually form teams. Going solo greatly decreases the survival rate, the Red Flame Old Immortal casually explained, before heading deeper into the massive pavilion. There, he approached a counter, behind which was a wall covered in a spiritual energy screen. The screen flickered constantly, with many names appearing, clearly synchronized with the demon slayer ranking outside. At the counter, an old man in gray robes was lazily slouched, his half-closed eyes giving him the appearance of someone who could never stay awake for long. Slap! A hand slapped down forcefully on the counter, and the Red Flame Old Immortal's loud voice echoed. "Old sleepyhead, stop napping and get to work." The old man in gray robes jolted awake, barely managing to open his eyes. He looked at the Red Flame Old Immortal with an annoyed expression. "Old drunkard, why are you shouting? You're not dead yet." "Heh, you'll probably die before me," the Red Flame Old Immortal retorted without hesitation, then waved his hand for Chen and the others to approach. "Get these 4 little ones a demon slayer order. This old man is in charge of this division," he added, introducing the old man in gray robes to the group. Chen and his companions were slightly surprised. They hadn't expected this unassuming old man to be the head of the division. If it weren't for the Red Flame Old Immortal's reminder, they would have easily mistaken him for a regular receptionist. They curiously scanned the old man in gray robes, but he showed no sign of spiritual energy fluctuation. He appeared as though he hadn't cultivated any spiritual power at all. But this was obviously impossible. In that case, the ability to suppress one's spiritual energy to such an extent, where it wasn't even noticeable, could only be achieved by someone at the Heavenly Supreme level. Even the perfect Earth Supreme would struggle to conceal their energy so thoroughly. Chen and Luo Li exchanged a look, both feeling a deep sense of shock. No wonder the Red Flame Old Immortal had warned them not to treat the Palace of the Great Thousand as just a symbol. The power it contained was far more terrifying than they had imagined. The old man in gray robes raised his half-closed eyes, glanced at Chen and his group, then turned to the Red Flame Old Immortal, his voice filled with surprise. "Old ghost, looks like you're after the Supreme Spirit Heavenly Light again. But it seems that every time, the person you pick ends up failing." The Red Flame Old Immortal's face darkened instantly. "It's not like others have succeeded either." The gray-robed old man grinned. "I'm just curious why you've chosen a little girl who's only a lower Earth Supreme this time." How did he instantly see that the Red Flame Old Immortal had chosen Luo Li, not Chen and the others? The Red Flame Old Immortal curled his lips and said, "To obtain the Supreme Spirit Heavenly Light, it's not about strength, but about talent and opportunity. This little girl is the most suitable person I've seen in recent years." "Is that so?" The gray-robed elder seemed doubtful, but didn't say much more. With a flick of his hand, Chen and the others suddenly felt a sharp pain in their fingertips, and 4 drops of fresh blood shot out from their fingertips, floating before the gray-robed elder. Chen and the others couldn't help but change their expressions, gazing at the gray-robed elder with a hint of fear. It was clear that the elder's ability to easily extract their blood, bypassing their spiritual defenses, was a little domineering. "Haha." The gray-robed elder grinned at them and snapped his fingers. For beams of spiritual light shot out, enveloping the drops of blood. The light solidified and transformed into 4 tokens, flying toward Chen and the others. Chen reached out and caught one. The token was black, with the blood-red words Demon Slayer on it, and at the bottom, the words Junior Demon Slayer were inscribed. If you slay the extraterritorial evil clan, just shatter a piece of their demonic soul and pour it into the Demon Slayer token. You will then gain corresponding Demon Slayer points. Also, the token is forged using your blood, so only you can check the Demon Slayer points inside. Even if others obtain it, it will be useless, said the gray-robed elder. Chen and the others played with the Demon Slayer tokens before cupping their fists and bowing to the gray-robed elder, saying, "Thank you, Senior." Seeing them receive the tokens, the Red Flame Old Immortal turned back to the gray-robed elder and whispered, "Old Sleepyhead, how many forces have come after hearing about the appearance of the Sacred Abyss?" The gray-robed elder raised his eyelids and smiled slyly. "Well, isn't there one here already? Let me see. Seems like someone from the Wen family of the Northern Domain." The Red Flame Old Immortal turned his head, and saw a group of people entering the pavilion. Leading them was an elderly woman in red, walking slowly, which made the red flame old immortal's eyes narrow. Could it be River Granny of the Wen family? Mu Chun, Luo Li, and the others also curiously looked up, watching the impressive group enter the pavilion. As their gaze passed over the elderly woman in red, a tall, slender, proud figure suddenly caught their eye. Though they hadn't seen her for years, the figure was still strikingly familiar. Mu Chun and Luo Li exchanged glances, their expressions a little strange, clearly surprised that, after all these years, they would encounter an old acquaintance here. The elderly woman in red walked in slowly, her face cold. Despite having no discernible spiritual energy fluctuations around her, no one dared to underestimate her. Anyone who could survive in the perilous sacred abyss continent had sharp eyes, and they could tell that this red-clad elderly woman was an incredibly powerful figure. However, in the Great Thousand Pavilion, many gazes lingered on the elderly woman for just a moment before they were immediately drawn to the figure behind her. Among the many pairs of eyes, there was a girl dressed in deep purple. She had a tall, slender figure, and her straight, smooth legs, encased in fitted pants, exuded a breathtaking beauty. She had a radiant, stunning face, with bright, captivating eyes that shimmered like stars, radiating boundless youthful energy. Her long, black hair was tied into a ponytail, and the slender, shiny tail of the ponytail swayed as she walked, creating a proud arc. This girl was extraordinarily beautiful, and her beauty wasn't the usual fragile kind. Instead, it was a striking, heroic elegance, with her slightly pursed red lips lifting ever so slightly, full of self-assured pride. In the Great Thousand Pavilion, many gazes burned with intensity as they watched the girl, though, in terms of looks, the silver-haired girl from earlier might have been more striking. However, the unique and confident aura of the girl in deep purple had also captured the attention of many. However, despite the attraction, no one dared to make a flirtatious remark. The moment the red-robed old woman casually swept her cold, indifferent gaze over, it was enough to extinguish the fiery passion in anyone's heart. At the same time, Mu Chun and Luo Li, both with slightly surprised expressions, fixed their gazes on the proud and radiant girl. Because that familiar face was unmistakably the one they had encountered during the Five Academies War. Wen Qingxian. I can't believe she's from the Wen family of the Northern Domain. Luo Li muttered in surprise. The Wen family, having risen from the Great Thousand World just 1,000 years ago, couldn't be compared to the Luo God clan in terms of history. However, their power had long since joined the ranks of the superpowers in the Great Thousand World. With such a background, why would she come to the 10,000 Phoenixes Spiritual Academy? Mu Chen also wondered aloud. It's said that behind the 10,000 Phoenixes Spiritual Academy, there's the shadow of the Wen family in the Northern Domain. Luo Li whispered. Mu Chen then understood, realizing there was indeed a connection. No wonder when Qingxian had appeared in the 10,000 Phoenixes Spiritual Academy. As they spoke in low voices, the group that had entered the Great Thousand Pavilion had already reached the counter under the guidance of the red-robed old woman. At that moment, when Qingxian, who had been inattentively gazing around, suddenly froze in her tracks. Her beautiful eyes were fixed in disbelief on the pair of men and women ahead. Several men and women were following Wen Qingxian, but clearly, they all centered around her. As she halted, they all stopped as well. Qingxian, what's wrong? A man in white robes, with a handsome face and an elegant demeanor, smiled and asked in a gentle voice. From the strong spiritual power radiating from him, it was clear that he was at the peak of the half-step great perfection realm. It seemed that, even within the Wen family, his status was not low. However, when Qingxian ignored him and stared in astonishment at Mu Chen and Luo Li, who were smiling in front of her. After a brief moment, she finally exclaimed, Luo Li? Mu Chen. It's really been a long time, Luo Li smiled gently. I never expected to run into you again here, Mu Chen chuckled, feeling a bit nostalgic. During the Five Academies War, they had gone from strangers to familiar faces, and had even cooperated and fought side by side through many battles. After the war ended, they went their separate ways. They had thought they would never meet again, but here they were, reunited today. Is it really you guys? Wen Qingxuan's eyes shone with joy as she rushed forward, unable to hide her excitement. She extended her slender arm to embrace the two of them. But just as Mu Chen was about to accept the hug, when Qin Xian suddenly pivoted, turning her arm into an elbow and striking him in the chest. Mu Chen staggered back 2 steps, clutching his chest, and couldn't help but smirk. You want to take advantage of me? Dream on. When Qin Xian rolled her eyes at him, then wrapped her arm around Luo Li's slim waist, exclaiming joyfully, Luo Li, you're so beautiful now that I hardly recognize you. She wasn't lying. Compared to when they had met in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, Luo Li had undergone significant changes. With the years of experience and the influence of the Luotian divine body, she now possessed an astonishing beauty. Luo Li smiled gently, her lips curling up. It was clear she was also happy to meet when Qin Xian here, as she fondly remembered the carefree days at the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Friends made during that time now seemed all the more precious. Why are you still with this guy, Mu Chen? He's not good enough for you. When Qin Xian gave Mu Chen a sidelong glance, then said with a pained expression to Luo Li. Mu Chen's face darkened upon hearing this. Luo Li covered her mouth and chuckled softly, her glass-like eyes looking at Mu Chen with a hint of teasing. Qin Xian, is this your friend? As the three of them were catching up, a voice interrupted. The man in white robes had stepped forward with a smile, looking at Mu Chen and Luo Li. Hello, I am Wen Ziyu, also from the Wen family, he said, his eyes releasing a kind, genuine warmth that made it easy for others to feel favorable toward him. When he looked at Wen Qin Xian, the affection in his eyes was clear, showing that he was pursuing her. Mu Chen and Luo Li had no negative impression of this person and both nodded with a smile. I'm Mu Chen. Luo Li. When Qin Xian, however, shot a glare at Wen Ziyu. Her expression showed no interest in him at all, which made Wen Ziyu helplessly chuckle. At this moment, the old woman in red slowly approached. Her cold gaze first fell on Luo Li, and she nodded before hoarsely commenting, "What a beautiful young girl." She then glanced at Mu Chen but said not a word. Instead, she swept past him, her disregard for him unmistakable. However, Mu Chen didn't feel the slightest irritation, as he sensed that this old woman in red wasn't targeting him personally. It seemed that she was indifferent to all men. Red Flame Old Immortal, you certainly arrived quickly this time. The old woman in red locked her cold gaze on Red Flame Old Immortal at the back and spoke faintly. Heh, River Granny, there are no elders from your Wen family in the Sacred Abyss, so why do you come every time? Red Flame Old Immortal replied with a quirky laugh. Ancient Sacred Abyss isn't owned by anyone. Why shouldn't my Wen family come for such an opportunity? River Granny, the old woman in red, sneered. Red Flame Old Immortal rolled his eyes, not wanting to engage in pointless quarrels with this elderly woman who showed no warmth to any man. River Granny also didn't waste time arguing with Red Flame Old Immortal. She immediately turned her gaze to the elderly man in gray at the counter and said, Elder Wan Feng, please issue demon-slaying orders for these young ones. The gray-robed elder lazily nodded. With a wave of his sleeve, several demon-slaying orders flew toward Wen Qin Xian and the others moments later. When Qin Xian received the demon-slaying orders and, with her beautiful eyes, looked at Mu Chen and Luo Li. Are you two also here for the ancient sacred abyss? Mu Chen and Luo Li both nodded. Wonderful. I never expected that after so many years, we'd have a chance to cooperate again. When Qin Xian said cheerfully. Mu Chen glanced at Wen Qin Xian and realized that she had now reached the level of a lower Earth Supreme. Clearly, her strength had increased significantly since returning to the Wen family. It's great to have such a powerful force as backing, Mu Chen couldn't help but think to himself. However, looking at the current situation, it seemed that many powerful forces had been drawn to the ancient sacred abyss. Even though the abyss had not yet fully revealed itself, Mu Chen wondered how many formidable teams would show up when it truly did. It seemed that this competition for the sacred abyss would be unexpectedly intense. Let's go. We'll find a place to rest first. Red Flame Old Immortal waved his hand at Mu Chen and Luo Li, signaling that he was ready to leave with them. Mu Chen nodded, planning to say goodbye to Wen Qin Xian first. But just as he was about to speak, a low murmur spread through the Great Thousand Pavilion. In the vast and spacious pavilion, many gazes turned in surprise toward the entrance. Mu Chen sensed it too, and looked up. He saw 3 groups of people entering the Great Thousand Pavilion at the same time. The imposing aura they exuded created an invisible pressure that seemed to envelop the entire pavilion. Under this pressure, even those seasoned veterans who had experienced life and death situations in the Sacred Abyss continent appeared serious, their eyes filled with wariness. Mu Chen focused on the 3 groups entering the pavilion. His pupils suddenly contracted, for he noticed that each of these three groups had a black tower insignia on their robes. That black tower was something Chen recognized all too well. It was the pagoda. And in the entire Great Thousand World, there was only one clan that used this pagoda as their clan symbol, the Futu ancient clan, one of the 5 ancient clans. These 3 exceptionally powerful groups had clearly come from the Futu ancient clan,